Hello, mathematicians. Today we're going to be learning about percents, more specifically writing improper fractions as percents and decimals. To get us started, here we have a 10 by 10 grid. And a 10 by 10 grid is great for percents because percents are out of 100, and a 10 by 10 grid has 100 little squares. However, sometimes we have percents that are more than 100, so we're going to use more than one grid to represent those percents. To get us started, we're given an improper fraction here, and this improper fraction is 175 over 100. Now, we know that an improper fraction means that it's more than 1. So in this case, it means that we're going to shade in 175 of these squares. So we have a hole here, and then we have a part of another grid shaded. So as a fraction, we were given 175 over 100. Because it's over 100, it made it easy for us to represent our model here. But now let's go ahead and simplify it. So the biggest number we could divide 175 and 100 by is 25. 175 divided by 25 is 7, and 100 divided by 25 is 4. So we still have an improper fraction here. We've just simplified it. So now we can write this as a mixed number. So 7 divided by 4 is 1 whole, and then we have 3 as a remainder over 4. So 7 over 4 is equal to 1 3/4. As a percent, this would be 175% because we have 175 of these squares shaded. And as a decimal, this would be 1 75/100 because we have 1 whole square shaded, 1 whole grid, and then we have 75 of another grid shaded, and that's 75 out of 100. So as a decimal, that would be 1 75/100. Next, we have 49 over 20. And this one is hard to shade in because our fraction is not out of 100, it's out of 20. So what we're going to do is we're going to find an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100. So we know that if we take our denominator 20 and multiply that by 5, we get 100. However, whatever we do to the denominator, we need to do to the numerator as well. So we're going to go ahead and multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 5. So 49 times 5 is equal to 245, and 20 times 5 is equal to 100. So now that we have that, we know that we're going to shade in 245 squares because now we have a fraction that's out of 100. Now, before we move on to what the percent is, we could also take our original fraction that was given to us and rewrite that as a mixed number. So all we did here was take our original improper fraction and wrote that as a mixed number. So now that we know that 49 over 20 is equal to 245 over 100, that means that the percent is going to be 245% because our percents are out of 100 and we found the equivalent fraction to 49 over 20 where the denominator is 100. As a decimal, this would be 2 45/100 because we have 2 whole grids that are shaded in, and then we have 45 squares of the last grid shaded in. So we have 2 45/100. Here we have 33 over 10. So we have another improper fraction that is not out of 100. So what we need to do is we need to find an equivalent fraction that is out of 100 so that we can model this. So then we ask ourselves, what can we multiply the denominator 10 by to get 100? And we can multiply 10 by 10 to get 100. However, whatever we multiply the denominator by, we also have to multiply the numerator by. So we're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 10. 33 times 10 is equal to 330, and 10 times 10 is equal to 100. So now we have 330 over 100. So that means we're going to shade in 330 of these little boxes in our grids. Before we move on to percent, we're going to take our original improper fraction and write it as a mixed number. So we get 3 3/10. For our percent, because we have 330 of these squares shaded in, our percent is 330%. And that's because we have 330 out of 100 and our percents are out of 100. As a decimal, we could write this as 3 30/100 because we have 3 whole grids that are shaded in, which is how we get the whole number 3. And then we have 30 out of 100 of these squares that are shaded in for the last grid, which is how we get 30/100. So our answer is 3 30/100, or we could drop the 0 and say 3 3/10. Finally, we have our last example, which is 35/25. The first thing we need to do is find an equivalent fraction to 35/25 that has a denominator of 100. And so we ask ourselves, what can we multiply our denominator 25 by to get 100? And we can multiply 25 by 4 to get 100. But whatever we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator as well. So we have to multiply our numerator and our denominator by 4. 35 times 4 is equal to 140, and 25 times 4 is equal to 100. So now we have 140 over 100, which is perfect because percents are out of 100. So this means we're going to shade in 140 little squares out of our grids. Before we move on, if we took our original improper fraction, which is 35/25, and wrote that as a mixed number, we would get 1 10/25, which we could simplify to 1 2/5. As a percent, we're going to look at our improper fraction that is out of 100 to help us. So we know that 35/25 is equal to 140 over 100. So we're going to use 140 over 100 to help us. This means that the percent is going to be 140 because percents are out of 100. And as a decimal, this is going to be 1 40/100 because we have one entire grid shaded in. And then we have 40 of the little squares from our second grid shaded in, meaning we have 40/100. So we have 1 40/100. Or we could drop the 0 and say 1 4/10.